Johnny here for Johnny's Car Care and Reviews with your co-host, Winston. We're here to talk to you all about the new Ford Maverick pickup truck. Now, we're pretty excited. This thing is really growing on us slowly because at first I did have my reservations. But here today, I'm gonna answer the question of whether or not you should wait to get your Ford Maverick. And that's not because I think there's issues with the Ford Maverick in its current form. I actually think it's incredible. But I also think there's some very interesting options coming down the pipeline. Now, of course, Ford won't talk about this because they want you to focus on the here and the now. And at the end of the video, I'll also cover why you probably can get away with buying one of the Ford Mavericks in their current configurations, and then switching that later on when we have some very interesting configurations coming up. So in this video, I'm going to talk to you about the possibility of a plug-in Ford Maverick, as well as, and that would probably be front wheel drive as well. A little before that, I do expect there to be an all-wheel drive hybrid. I'm going to explain why there isn't already a all-wheel drive hybrid and what it's going to take to get an all-wheel drive hybrid out of the Ford Maverick pickup truck. So Winston, say hi, your co-host, and Johnny here are going to take care of you with the question of whether or not you should wait, and if you have to wait to get those powertrains. Because I think that in common terms, I think the Maverick is going to be pretty flippable, and we do see that in Ford's lease residual percentages. So when Ford will be offering lease prices on the Maverick, that's going to come with a pretty high residual. That means, let's compare. A Ford Escape, for example, on a 5-year lease has about a 30% residual. That means Ford, on lease over 5 years, believes that the vehicle will lose 70% of its overall value. And on 4 years, it's not that much more than 30% as well. Now for the Ford Maverick, completely different. 4-year lease residual percentage is actually quite high, meaning that Ford does believe that it's going to have a great resale value. And as such, that means, if Ford believes that the vehicle is only going to lose about 55% of its value over 4 years, that means if you pick one up now, you probably can go ahead and plan on switching it in 2 or 3 years. But let's talk about what we currently have and what's coming down the pipeline. So currently what you can get out of a Ford Maverick is you've really got two options. You have a front wheel drive, so an FHEV. So it starts with an F and not a P. If it started with a P, it's a plug-in. If it starts in with an F, it's a traditional hybrid. So you don't need to be worried about this. You don't have to plug it in. There's nothing complicated about it. Basically, as soon as you let go of the gas pedal on a traditional hybrid at Ford, well, your transmission is going to start turning in the opposing direction from its regular direction, in which the transmission turns one direction to turn the wheels. You let go of the gas pedal, and then your transmission starts to go in the opposite direction to, really charge up that battery. So it has a 1.1 kilowatt hour battery. It's coming from an engine that's a 2.5 liter Atkinson engine. And then engine itself is producing 162 horsepower at 5,600 RPM. And it's also creating 155 pound-feet of torque at 4,000 RPM. Now, when the electric engine kicks in, which it'll most often be helping out anytime you need to tow, when you're asking for a little bit of acceleration, or in other words, when you're asking for a little bit of extra power, or when it's just running on its own, that'll be the case at other times. So altogether it has 191 horsepower. It's an aluminum block engine, and it's a good engine. Look, it's already in the Escape, and it's very similar setup to what we have had in the Ford Fusion for years, since 2013. So this setup is A-okay. It's been proven. Now I must say though, to really get into the nitty-gritty, this 2.5 liter, while it's unbelievably similar to the 2.5 liter in the Escape, there are some minor differences that actually kind of make some major differences overall. So I'm going to be posting just to the side here all those differences that you're getting, because this 2.5 liter is Ford's first built in-house hybrid engine. So they modified it, and the modifications led to the engine actually being 20 pounds lighter. It's an engine that now requires less copper use, so a rare material. So this engine overall is better. All the technicals are going to be on the side because, well, Motor Trend is best at getting into the really technical stuff, and I don't want to make this video extra long. So just basically to summarize it, it's different because the V-shaped slots, well, they're double V-shaped slots, and they're molded in place during the manufacturing process, which wasn't the case for the built out of house 2.5 liter. And the overall process is you're using less rare materials, and the engine ends up being 20 pounds lighter, and it's actually stronger. It can withstand more. So, there was a reason why they built this in-house. It's a better 2.5 liter. However, the consequences is that it doesn't quite mat up to the transmission quite the same, and will need to be modified if we can ever hope to have an all-wheel drive hybrid like we have on the Escape. So yes, it's the same platform, it's the same size engine, but because that engine is built in-house, well, guess what? It's more efficient, it's lighter, it produces actually a little bit more horsepower, just under 20 extra horsepower. It creates extra torque. It's lighter. Overall, to conclude, it's a better engine, this 2.5 liter built in-house Ford engine. However, it's created complications, and you can't just make it all-wheel drive when matting it to that eCVT transmission, which is a very much a proven transmission. Speaking of that platform, looking at the platform is key to understanding that the story doesn't just end here. Because you'd look at that new engine being built in-house, not quite fitting to the eCVT, and we'd say, hey, story's done. We're not gonna get an all-wheel drive. And hey, maybe that means this won't be like the Escape. It won't follow the Escape's release plan, which they started off with a gas, then they gave us front-wheel drive hybrid, then they gave us all-wheel drive hybrid, and now we're going to get a front-wheel drive plug-in. Well, I think the Maverick is going to follow that same process, and here's evidence. You look at the Maverick's platform, and even though they're only putting in a 1.1 kilowatt hour battery on the rear passenger side, the space on the platform, the whole floor is actually raised 1 inch, and there's space behind the driver's side to put in a bigger battery, or in essence to put in that plug-in battery that's from the Escape. Now, from memory, that's a 14.4 kilowatt hour battery, but please go ahead and correct me in the comment section if I didn't get that right. It might be a 14.1, but from memory it's a 14.4 kilowatt, and they've left the space open to fit that battery right there. Now, I think this is probably something we're going to get 2 years down the road. I strongly believe, I'm 99% certain that we will get a plug-in Maverick. The whole point of this vehicle is become more fuel efficient. Now, if you're thinking of getting a Maverick now, the front-wheel drive hybrid for a lot of people will do the trick because they don't need all-wheel drive. That's one thing. Secondly, with Ford's lease residuals being high on this vehicle, showing that Ford has confidence that this product won't depreciate like crazy, like certain models, this should be something that's flippable. So you can probably run this 2-3 years and just switch it for an all-wheel drive hybrid if that's what you're looking for. And for a plug-in, I would expect this to show up in about 2 or 3 years. So if plug-in is your ultimate goal because you're thinking, hey, I want to be able to, in extreme cold temperatures, probably get only 30 kilometers in all electric mode. I'll convert that to miles in just a moment, or up to 80 kilometers in all electric mode when you're being careful and the weather isn't too, the weather's relatively reasonable, not extremely hot nor extremely cold. I think that out of the Escape plugin, you're going to be getting about 80 kilometers. Now, I'm getting my Escape plugin. Mary's Escape plugin should be showing up hopefully soon because she's still running the 2018 Mustang and we're still using it as a garden and pool vehicle. So we've got rose bushes sticking out the back seat and filling the trunk with dirt and whatnot, dirt bags, and it hasn't been the greatest, but we hope that Escape shows up soon, and when it does, I will do some real world testing on the what you can expect out of autonomy from that battery when you do force the vehicle to be in all electric mode. So that's a PHEV. Now remember, what we're getting from the Maverick at first is an FHEV. meaning you don't plug it in, you can't plug it in. It is the simplest system. I know a lot of people, as soon as they hear the word electric, they go, oh, I want to stay away from that. That's going to be too complicated. But I promise you, there's nothing complicated about these traditional hybrids. You press the gas, it goes forward. You put it in park, you drive for the amount of time you want to drive, you go to the gas station. It's like any gas-powered vehicle, but you're going to get fantastic, fuel economy. So you're looking at 40 miles per gallon, probably an average more around 37 miles per gallon between highway and city. And for those of you that have been very reluctant or hesitant or just not liking the Ford Maverick because you're saying, oh, it's not made in the US, just keep in mind that parts for this vehicle are coming from all over the place. Just one example are that the batteries in the Ford Maverick are being built in Rawsonville, Michigan, which is just east of Ann Arbor. So, that's a pretty huge and important component. When you're buying a Maverick, you're still encouraging the Canadian, American, and of course also the Mexican economies. And remember, we have a trade pact. We're working together, these three countries, we're working together to, be successful globally against, global trade. So there's nothing wrong. You don't have to feel like you're a trader if you're driving a Ford Maverick. Now, the day we do get a plug-in Ford Maverick, I do expect it to actually have the same autonomy as an Escape, all-electric autonomy. And that's because the Ford Maverick weighs 3,674 pounds when it has that 2.5-liter front-wheel drive hybrid setup. Really, I'm really expecting that my Escape trials and tests to really be representative of future product coming out of the Maverick. Now, of course, if you want to pull more than 2,000 pounds, 2,000 pounds is what you can pull with that 2.5-liter hybrid engine. Here's the good news. There is the 2-liter, and if you're going through some very snowy conditions, usually even if you live up north and you're in the city, you can get away with a front-wheel drive because, well, the roads are plowed all day and night. However, if you're out in the countryside, I can totally understand this. That's where I was originally living for a good part of my life, and you're gonna want to go with a 2-liter turbo. That's an EcoBoost all-wheel drive system. It weighs 3,563 pounds, so you can expect, we can't test drive a Maverick quite yet, but you can probably go out and test drive an Escape, and you're gonna get a really good idea of how that feels. Now, I've owned 2 Lincoln MKCs, and Mary owned one as well. So together we've had 2-liter Lincoln MKCs. They weigh about 3,700 pounds, and I can tell you the acceleration is fantastic. The fuel economy was okay. I'll have to translate this, but we were doing about 10 liters per 100 kilometers, 10 to 11 liters per 100 kilometers. My parents have a 2-liter Lincoln MKC. They're doing about 9.6 liters per 100 kilometers, but they drive kind of slow. So it's a relatively fuel efficient engine. It's not too bad, but its real perk is it pulls great. It's got tons of acceleration, and I'm confident anyone who is a more cars and more power type is gonna like it. I liked my 2-liter, and you know what? I also owned a 2.3-liter MKC, so I got the better of myself, and I thought I needed more power, and of course I always need more cars. I love switching it up. So I traded in my 2-liter turbo Lincoln MKC and got myself a 2.3-liter. And you know what? For the price difference, I was relatively disappointed. It wasn't worth the extra money. A 2-liter turbo really does the job. Now, why does it do the job? Back then, in the model year, the 2016 I had, it had 240 horsepower and 270 pound-feet of torque. And guess what? You're getting more out of the Ford Maverick. So out of the Ford Maverick, you're gonna be getting 250 horsepower, and that 250 horsepower comes in at 5,500 RPM. That's a little high, but remember, horsepower is more about top speed than it is about, feeling of the acceleration. So what's important is the torque, and this has 277 pound-feet of torque at 3,000 revolutions per minute of the engine. So that's what's gonna make you feel like you're driving something that's really powerful. You're gonna like the 2-liter Maverick if you like performance. And of course, it can pull 4,000 pounds, but remember, you're seeing 4,000 pound towing put everywhere, and it's easy to think this applies to all Mavericks. It certainly does not apply to all Maverick pickup trucks. It only applies if you get the 4K tow package. So make sure that if you want to tow 4,000 pounds, price your Maverick with the 4K tow package. It's essential. And when you get a 2-liter turbo, guess what? They're made in Cleveland, Ohio, or Valencia, Spain. So you are definitely having some pretty good chances. If your Maverick is being bought and sold over here, you're probably getting one of the American-made 2-liter turbo EcoBoost engine. So that's something that a lot of you in the comments section see. It seems to be really important to you, and it's kind of important to me too. I think it's important to make sure that we have good jobs here. So great news. That engine, the 2-liter turbo engine, is made in the United States. Now time to discuss the last hurdle that's holding the Ford Maverick back in having an all-wheel drive hybrid, and that's the rear suspension. The rear suspension is basically off a Fiesta ST, and Ford Authority reported that we are going to need to modify that rear suspension. Okay, so Winston's back, and he's reminded me the last hurdle that's holding back an all-wheel drive hybrid Maverick and could actually push the production of this to 2023, and that's that the rear suspension was reported to need to be modified. So Ford Authority reported that the rear suspension of the Ford Maverick, which is actually off a Fiesta ST, needs to be modified to accommodate the all-wheel drive system. So we've got two hurdles. We've got the engine that needs to, the engine and transmission. In between the two, there needs to be a modification. And there's also the fact that the rear suspension currently doesn't quite have the space to allow the all-wheel drive system. So they'd have to move up the box, it looks like, or maybe even offer a different rear suspension. So we're gonna have to wait on that. I think Ford's gonna wanna resolve this within, I'd say the latest 2 years. But if they do wait 2 years, well, it will make it easier for people who bought one this year to swap. So, maybe that's part of their plan to sort of, get people to double dip, buy one now and buy one in 2.5 years. Anyways, lease residual percentages look like Ford believes that's going to be possible. When I see the high residuals, or in other words, Ford's confidence that the Maverick is not going to depreciate, for example, like many vehicles, like most vehicles, certainly not like a car or most SUVs. It's looking like this will be something that's flippable, very much so like a Ford Ranger or an F-150. So if you're thinking that you should wait to get these, one of these two options, either an all-wheel drive hybrid or a front-wheel drive plug-in Ford Maverick, it probably is. It's definitely worth waiting for. Both of those would be, absolutely fantastic to have. However, I really do think that you can just go right ahead, buy your Maverick now, and look at swapping it in 3 years if you've leased or if you've purchased and you've purchased on, a reasonable amount of time. For example, like a 72-month or an 84-month purchase. Of course, I always favor leases for myself when I want to switch relatively often. I find they're easy to get out of. They offer a little bit more protection, and I'll have to get into that into another video. But until then, I wish you all more cars and more power. And well, Winston and I really hope that you do get to put the pedal to the metal. And that's about what we're gonna go do. We had a nice little Mustang ride yesterday, and we hope that you get to put the pedal to the metal.